I'm looking for some alien toilet to park my bricks. Who's first?
Duke Nukem Forever is easily the worst game I have ever played. I decided to play it because I wanted to know if the rumors were true. Is all the hate and disappointment surrounding it justified? Or is it just another case of mass opinion being influenced by things beyond what the opinion is supposed to be about? This game famously took forever to release, which is fitting given its name, and even more fitting when you consider the abbreviation is DNF, or did not finish, as in what I've heard from every woman I've ever been with.
Step right up and get some.
For 15 agonizing years, this game was in development hell, being passed around from studio to studio, engine to engine, with no real plan to make it all come together. Just some vague idea of shooting guns and lots of boobs.
I'd buy this for $1.
Sometimes having too much time to work on something is a big fat red flag, especially when what you're working on is really just a horny version of Doom or Half-Life. The Great Pyramids of Egypt makes sense that they took so long to make. Those things are fucking massive, and aliens don't make great construction foremen. These developers may have been ultra talented and passionate, but were led by overly ambitious and seemingly incompetent leadership. So whatever I say is bad about this game is not meant to disparage the hard-working members of the dev team, whose blood, sweat, and tears were poured into this project, even if that blood was just filling up boners. When anything has this much time to build up hype and anticipation, it's reasonable for people to expect the result to actually be f***ing good. We complain so much about development teams being crunched and mangled by corporate greed and the push to get games to market, whether they're done or not. So many half-baked shit piles erupt onto store shelves every year because shareholders aren't playing the games, they're playing with the profits they create. So why bother to make sure they're actually any good? With enough good marketing, anything could pass the eye test and convince consumers to buy a game on day one, before reviews come out and reveal that we've all been duped. Naturally, when a game has been given plenty of time in the kitchen before being trotted out for the world to see, we would assume that extra time was well spent and the product is better off for it. Well, in the case of Duke Nukem Forever, that time meant nothing, and the game we got was unbearably stupid. The hype was unjustified, and my theory, time is irrelevant if management is incompetent.
Wow, what a reception.
Infinite monkeys with typewriters may be able to write Shakespeare if given enough time, but I'd rather just find someone who's literate and has an actual f***ing vision.
Oh yeah, baby. Much ado about this boner. I will live in thy heart, die in thy lap, and be buried in thy knockers.
I don't want this to turn into an extensive history lesson about Duke Nukem Forever's development. That is a video all by itself. But I do want to give it a quick rundown to bring context to why this game is such an insufferable and obnoxious mess that somehow took 15 years to see the light of day. Following the breakaway success of Duke Nukem 3D, developers 3D Realms were convinced they really had something with their Duke Nukem franchise. They believed that if they played their cards right and struck the iron while it was still hot, with a fury unknown to mankind, they could turn Duke into a household name, just like Mario or Spider-Man.
Mamma mia, it's a me, a Dukio.
But they had to nail the sequel. Announced in 1997 and slated for a holiday 1998 release, this game was hotly anticipated. Development began using id Software's Quake 2 engine, but the allure of the Unreal Engine was too strong to ignore, so the game was delayed to switch over. Then it was delayed again to switch to the newer version of Unreal Engine. 3D Realms co-founder George Broussard was obsessed with pushing the technological boundaries and couldn't bear Duke Nukem Forever appearing outdated by any measure. It's poetic that the fear of being perceived as obsolete was the main driving force for something that ended up being obsolete. Many working on the game in the early days admitted that there was no game, just a series of disjointed and chaotic tech demos. When they turned to leadership for guidance, they were seldom given answers. Now, tech demos and demonstrations of cool shit are fine, but they're not games. Technology is a means to the end of making a great game, not an end in itself. A truly great game that pushes the industry forward will use the fruits of technology as tools to craft immersive worlds, fuel engrossing narratives, and create engaging gameplay that all coalesce into a lasting and powerful experience. Duke Nukem Forever has none of those things.
Have a taste of my ball.
By 2000, Duke Nukem Forever was still far from complete. The success of Duke Nukem 3D was a blessing and a curse. While 3D Realms didn't require external funding to work on the project, they lacked any sort of financial pressure that could have driven it forward. They also lacked anyone who could challenge their leadership. Duke Nukem 3D not only convinced the studio of Duke Nukem's viability, but it also validated every decision they made up to that point, for better or worse. George Broussard became defiant in response to questions from fans and journalists, saying it would be released when it's done. In December 2000, the rights to publish Duke Nukem Forever was purchased by Take-Two Interactive, which hoped to release it in the following year. It did not. At E3 2001, 3D Realms released the first public view of Duke Nukem Forever in 3 years. It received a positive response, and the team was stoked, feeling that they were ahead of their competitors, but there was still no actual vision for what the game should be. The years of development hell kept ticking on. Now, there's a theory that many people will stop growing the moment they reach their pinnacle or a certain level of success. It's like they're trapped in amber, forever condemned to be the person they were when things were at their best, unwilling to risk changing or evolving, because what if it all comes crashing down? Getting better is hard, but staying the same is easy. So why bother trying anything different when you finally stumble on something that works? That's why Michael Jordan still dresses like it's 1993. So it should be no surprise to hear that one 3D Realms employee felt that they were developing with a 1995 mentality, with a team that was much smaller than other major games at the time. By 2003, only 18 people were working on Duke Nukem Forever full-time, and the years kept ticking, and still no Duke Nukem Forever. In a 2006 presentation, Broussard told a journalist the team had, quote, f***ed up, and they had to restart development.
Looks like Lady Luck just gave you the finger.
Anyways, on an unrelated note, by August 2006, around half of the team had left, frustrated by the lack of progress, and the years kept ticking on. In 2007, 3D Realms hired a new creative director. He was impressed by the game and felt it could be finished within a year, but Broussard disagreed. 3D Realms hired aggressively to expand the team to about 35 people. And finally, in 2009, 3D Realms exhausted its capital, so they asked Take-Two for $6 million to finish the game. After no agreement was reached, the team was laid off and development ceased. A small team of ex-employees, which later became Triptych Games, continued development from their homes. And look, I admire the dedication, I truly do. But this is like running back into a burning building to rescue a turd someone left in the toilet bowl. Sometimes it's better just to let things burn.
Blow it out your ass.
In September 2010, Gearbox Software, which had many former 3D Realms employees on its staff, announced that it had bought the Duke Nukem intellectual property from 3D Realms and would continue developing Duke Nukem Forever. And then it happened. It finally happened. On May 24th, 2011, Gearbox announced that Duke Nukem Forever had gone gold after almost 15 hellish years. At the time, Duke Nukem Forever held the Guinness World Record for the longest development time for a game, at 14 years and 44 days.
Now I've got a really bad feeling about this.
This game had so many chances to just curl up and die, yet somehow it endured throughout all the years. And was it worth it? Was it really worth the pain and suffering to bring this to the masses? If you judge this game based on the lofty expectations of a 15-year development period, obviously it can't hold up. Very few games could match that level of hype with quality. So let's remove that from the evaluation. I think it's possible now to review this game on its own merits, in a vacuum. And to be concise, Duke Nukem Forever is far and away the worst game I have ever played. It's boring, it's obnoxious, it lacks self-awareness in a way that I didn't think was possible. Its story barely exists. What little of it can be called narrative is aggressively stupid and charmless. Its gameplay is some of the most punchless and mind-numbing stuff I've ever seen. And it looks like a bargain bin Steam simulator game. It looks like a fan-made knockoff of itself. The humor was outdated for 1999, let alone 2011.
Yeah!
Now we can cause some damage!
You don't say cause some damage around Duke Nukem, man. You say we're gonna go bust some balls or tear shit up or something like that.
The overwhelming tidal wave of boobs, poop, and dick jokes is so one-dimensional and grating that it's not even clever enough to be offensive.
Got milk?
It's just sad and embarrassing.
Good to see you, Duke.
You want to touch it, don't you?
In all honesty, there are positive aspects to this game, but they are buried under a mountain of awful bullshit. That it's like finding a needle in a haystack the size of the Atlantic Ocean. Games are meant to be wish fulfillment, there's no doubt about that. The ability to become a superpowered murder machine, a sly-cooping thief, a treasure-hunting hunk with family drama, or an Italian plumber crushing Goombas in worlds that are only possible in our imaginations can be realized through the interactive medium of video games. So what fantasy is Duke Nukem Forever hoping to make a reality? Duke Nukem is the titular self-proclaimed badass. He's like Johnny Bravo but with guns. And he's in a world where he's a god among men. He's the most desirable man on Earth. The strongest, the baddest, the sexiest. Everywhere he goes, he's worshipped. Women beg him to have sex, and men grovel at his feet, hoping his badassery is contagious.
Who's your daddy now?
He has casinos, sports arenas, and towering burger joints all made in his image, donning his name. It's a world where the feminine form is valued above all else.
Why do they always take the hot ones?
Naked statues of women are considered the second highest form of art, topped only by busts of Duke himself. Duke rose to be a global powerhouse after he saved the world during his previous adventure in Duke Nukem 3D. With the alien threat pushed back and the Earth enjoying peace once again, Duke is free to bask in his own glory. Duke Nukem Forever begins with a cold open of a desperate scene of carnage. Aliens are attacking, the Earth Defense Force is struggling to hold off the Cycloid. The only one who can do anything is Duke. And so he does. He f***s that Cycloid up. But it turns out it was just a video game based on his previous adventure. Back into reality, Duke is now a celebrity millionaire and scheduled to appear on the Damn, It's Late talk show. On his way to the show, Duke witnesses a news broadcast announcing that aliens have returned. Unlike previous encounters, the aliens initially appeared peaceful and at first seemed to pose no harm to the humans of Earth. But Duke's talk show appearance is cancelled to allow television stations to cover the alien invasion. Duke retires to the Duke Cave in his home. There, he receives a call from the President and General Graves of the Earth Defense Force. The President orders Duke not to harm the invaders and adds that he is in diplomatic talks with the alien overlord. When Duke is attacked by hostile aliens, Duke is forced to disobey the President's orders and fight his way through the hordes of aliens. While battling through his casino, Duke witnesses the aliens abducting women, including his 2 pop star girlfriends. Graves tells Duke that the women are being held in the Duke Dome, and that the aliens have a vendetta to settle with Duke. He also warns Duke that the aliens are using the Hoover Dam to power a wormhole so more aliens can come through. So Duke travels to the Duke Dome. Inside, he finds swarms of octobrains and the missing women who have been impregnated with alien spawn. Duke finds the alien queen in control of the Duke Dome and kills her, but is wounded in the process and blacks out. During his incapacitation, Duke dreams of his strip club, as one might. He imagines a dancer offering him a lap dance, but only if he goes on a scavenger hunt. Naturally, he must find a bag of popcorn, a sex toy, and a condom.
Wrap it before you tap it.
This mission only seems to exist to have an excuse to bombard your screen with naked ladies. Fans of virtual titties will not be disappointed here. After regaining consciousness, Duke fights aliens who have taken over his prized Duke Burger restaurant. The real party, though, is at the Hoover Dam, so Duke gets there the only way he knows how, by monster truck. After battling through the dam, he finds his old friend Dylan, mortally wounded. Dylan tells Duke that the reborn Cycloid Emperor is at the dam and the only way to shut down the portal is to blow it up. Before dying, he gives Duke his demolition charges and wishes him luck. Duke places the explosives and destroys the dam, and the currents nearly drown him. Duke is then revived by an EDF soldier and awakens to find the portal gone. The President, who is also at the dam, rages at Duke for ruining his plans to work with the Cycloid Emperor. The President was actually intending to have the aliens kill Duke so he could control Earth alongside the aliens. He ordered a nuclear strike at the site of the dam to wipe out the remaining aliens, intending to leave Duke there to die. But then whoa, the Cycloid Emperor emerges. Duke then kills the Cycloid Emperor and is rescued by Graves as the nuclear bomb explodes. In a press conference, Duke announces his intent to run for President of the United States. Alright, that's the story in its entirety. I actually don't hate it because I know the point of the game is not to unfurl some challenging, nuanced narrative that inspires complex emotions and interesting payoffs. The story is just there to give Duke different scenarios to express his unique brand of ass-kicking. That doesn't make it any less stupid though, it's still a very, very stupid story. But at least it's supposed to be, it doesn't take itself too seriously, which I appreciate. It's not the same level of ironic shitposting of, say, Conker's Bad Fur Day, but it's serviceable as a way to move Duke from place to place. My issue is that the game the story is pushing along is fucking terrible. It's boring, it's obnoxious, it's shallow. Duke is such a deeply unlikable character with virtually no redeeming traits.
Take your pills, vitamins, every day, and you might grow up to be as awesome as me.
Okay.
He is just a Gatling gun of cheesy one-liners and milquetoast dull violence. Despite the entire world within Duke Nukem Forever treating Duke as some superhuman badass, he doesn't feel half as powerful as the game would suggest. I was expecting the same kind of visceral, bone-crunching mayhem of a Doom game, but I got something that just feels dull and stale. Not a single gun in the game is fun to shoot, and no enemy is fun to shoot at. They are just props that you click on until they fall over with very little impact or excitement. For a power fantasy, this game is woefully lacking in power. I went in kind of expecting the humor to save the entire experience. That it might be a shit game, but at least it'll make me laugh, right? I thought Duke Nukem's true value was his trademark demeanor and the world being wacky and whimsical to accommodate him. But no. Duke Nukem Forever just isn't funny. And I don't mean to say that it's too offensive or that laughing at it would be wrong. The game just isn't funny.
Duke, it was our first time. With an alien.
I first realized this when I was trying to get through a platforming puzzle that required me to manipulate a giant Duke statue in order to get to the upper level. But all the while, some EDF wiener was shouting at me the whole time, with things like,
Use your own arm! I mean his arm! Never mind. What? You don't want to touch yourself? Get up here! Need to give yourself a hand?
over and over again. A few minutes later, I'm tasked with protecting Duke's twin girlfriends, who are meant to be a parody of the Olsen twins, called the Wholesome Twins, and one of them yells,
I promise never to do anything naughty ever again!
And the other replies,
Hello, don't say that! Duke will never say that because you promised that!
I give them credit for having the basic structure of a joke, setup, punchline, the whole thing, but the premise is stupid and the punchline is just weak. The entire game is just these awful jokes, constantly. I wouldn't even mind this level of lowbrow toilet humor if the game had any shred of self-awareness or humility, but instead it plays everything straight, as if it actually believes everything it's saying is the pinnacle of humor.
That's step 2. Step 3 is, profit? Right! You ready?
And I'm the furthest person from being some expert or authority on what should be comedy and what isn't. But I think it would be a whole lot funnier if it could laugh at itself and just acknowledge how ridiculous it is. Instead, Duke just goes about his day vomiting the dumbest shit possible.
Look at my ass.
And at no point does he or anyone else suggest that he's anything but the strongest, biggest, most handsome boy around. I thought for a bit that Duke Nukem is like Johnny Bravo but with guns, but that doesn't feel like a fair description, because at least Johnny Bravo gets to be the punchline. He's constantly humiliated for being a self-obsessed creep. Duke Nukem is praised for being a narcissistic weirdo. And I have no place to say what is or isn't offensive to do or say. I can't speak for anyone else on how they should feel, but one major piece of criticism that this game got was its depiction of women as sex objects to be gawked at. I can see that, but I also recognize that this game shouldn't be taken seriously. And if it makes you uncomfortable, I totally understand that, but I don't think it's worth the energy to crucify this very silly game. It's meant to be stupid, it's meant to be offensive, that's the joke. To me, what makes Duke Nukem so unlikable is that he isn't funny, he isn't relatable, he isn't interesting as a character. He doesn't grow or reflect on his actions. He's literally just an avatar for players who want to shoot guns and look at boobs. And I guess there's nothing wrong with that, but it makes for a protagonist. Plus, he just sucks to play as. So let's talk about that. Duke Nukem has an arsenal of weapons at his disposal, but he can only hold 2 at a time. Which, to me, that's fine. Halo popularized that mechanic of forcing the player to consider their loadout before heading into battle, taking advantage of weapons dropped by fallen enemies to keep themselves in the fight. It's a great choice, because it makes combat more engaging, and allows the player to have a more personal connection with the weapons, because they have to be intentional about which ones they want to carry. But that only goes as far as the weapons are fun to use. And for me, the only weapons that felt truly satisfying to shoot were the Ripper, which is like a weird 3-barreled machine gun, and the Devastator, which is a dual-wield rocket launcher thing. These were the only weapons that felt as powerful as they looked, and able to inflict the level of destruction that the game promises. Everything else is flat, boring, and punchless. Duke's signature M1911 looks cool, but shoots like a fucking spitball. The shotgun looks menacing, but doesn't do nearly the kind of killing that one would expect, often taking several shots to take an enemy down if you're any further away than point blank. The railgun is actually an extremely potent sniper-like weapon, but the impact doesn't match the damage that it does, which makes it incredibly unsatisfying to use. There's no recoil, there's no punch, it's just pew pew. There are some gadgets to use as well, like the Hollow Duke, which places a digital version of the Dukester on the ground to distract enemies. It's pretty useful and even says robotic versions of Duke's catchphrases, which I found amusing.
I will take your head off and poop into your neck.
There's also a freeze ray and shrink ray that do exactly what they say on the tin, but the range on the freeze ray is so pitiful that it's barely worth using. The shrink ray, on the other hand, is a neat little toy that can make enemies tiny and crushable, but once again, even this is janky and unsatisfying. Stepping on shrunk down enemies comes with this weird delayed animation where Duke almost hesitates or stutters before he steps on them, as if he has to get into position before the animation plays out. It's awkward and clunky, especially when compared to something like the glory kills in Doom, where tearing apart an enemy is smooth as butter and fits seamlessly into the rhythm of combat. I know it's not fair to compare Duke Nukem Forever to a game that came out years later, but that's what came to mind. The only true bright spot of this game is the interactive world. Throughout the game, there are little trinkets and bobs to play around with, like taking a vicious piss in the toilet, drawing on the whiteboard or a kid's autograph book, playing pinball and getting pissed when it's as bad as the rest of the game,
Piece of shit.
driving a little RC monster truck, touching an electrical socket with your bare hands, lifting weights like a Chad.
Sup, baby? You're on some real dope king shit, real talk. Sometimes the heaviest things we lift are not the weights, but our feelings. Keep your head up, king. Your crown is falling.
Playing pool and getting pissed when it's as bad as the rest of the game.
What the fuck?
Duke, you don't have time to play with your balls.
Admiring yourself in the mirror.
You are one ugly motherfucker.
Punching a fallen boss in the groin, repeatedly. Making a photocopy of your own ass. Playing slots and getting pissed when it's as bad as the rest of the game. Just about every interactable object will reward Duke with an ego boost, which is the game's version of a health bar. Duke survives purely off of ego, which may be the only bit of self-awareness in the entire game. Finding these little diversions was the only thing that was enjoyable in Duke Nukem Forever. They felt like the only unique and inspired thing the game could offer. But do you know what's not enjoyable? The platforming puzzles. Each one is no more complicated than placing barrels on a weighted platform or moving a button to move a platform into place. They are not mentally stimulating whatsoever, despite making up a significant portion of the single-player experience. One that sticks out in particular is the one in the Duke Burger. The kitchen is flooded and the water electrified. Falling in will result in almost instant death. An employee is cowering in the center, pleading with Duke constantly to shut the power off so she can escape. And by the way, Duke was shrunk down to mini size, which happens a few times throughout the story. And I don't actually hate that mechanic. It makes for some decently clever level layouts, and a way to shake up the tedium of wandering through even more boring, monotonous corridors, killing the same 3 or 4 enemies ad nauseum. Anyway, the kitchen turns into a platforming level, where you must contend with shelves, condiments, and pig cops to make your way to the other end and shut the power off. And the game just isn't cut out for this sort of precise movement. The physics can be funky at times, and I was pushed into the water on several occasions, because Duke just decided that bumping into a wall is reason for freaking the fuck out. It was frustrating, and with the seemingly random placement of checkpoints, meant I was forced to do long sections of this bullshit level over and over again. If I had one word to describe this game, it would be unsatisfying. Everything about Duke Nukem Forever is just unsatisfying. The guns in combat are uninspired and outdated. The story and characters are boring and almost non-existent. Duke himself is obnoxious and one-dimensional. The world is dull and lifeless, save for a few diversions. I feel for the developers and the way they went through over a decade plus working on this project, but maybe when the universe is giving you every reason to bail and try something different, it's better to listen instead of trying to drag this broken game across the finish line long after it made sense to anyone. And that's why Duke Nukem is the worst game I've ever played. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing and leaving a like and comment to tell me what you think about this video. It means the world to me and does a tremendous job to push this video to more people. And please take a moment to remember that you are worth it. Your darkest moments don't define you. and there's always a tomorrow. Thank you, and have a nice day.